I can't believe this! They're trampling the crops!
Look, over here. Get these.
I woke up to noise that didn't make sense. At first, I thought it was just another busy morning. Maybe neighbors having guests over, maybe kids playing louder than usual. But something about it felt off. It wasn't just noise. It was constant, overlapping voices, car doors slamming, people shouting to each other like they were at some kind of event. I sat up in bed and checked the time. It was barely past 7 in the morning. Too early for this kind of chaos. Then I heard something that made my stomach tighten, a voice yelling, "Grab as many as you can before they're gone." That's when I got up. I didn't even bother changing properly. I just threw on a jacket and stepped outside, still trying to make sense of what I was hearing. And the moment I saw my field, I froze. There were people everywhere. Not just a few. Not just a handful. Dozens. No, more than that. Families, kids, adults, all spread across my strawberry farm like it was some kind of public park. People were walking between the rows, crouching down, picking strawberries straight off the plants. Some had brought baskets. Others had plastic bags. I even saw one guy using his shirt like a pouch, stuffing it full. For a second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Because this wasn't just wrong. It was impossible. This was private property. My farm. And nobody was supposed to be here. I started walking forward, slowly at first, like maybe if I got closer, the scene would somehow correct itself. Like I'd realize I was misunderstanding something. But no. It only got worse the closer I got. Plants were being stepped on. Rows were getting crushed under careless feet. Kids were running through the field, laughing, not even looking where they were going. Ripe strawberries were being picked alongside unripe ones, many tossed aside after a single bite. And the people, they looked comfortable, relaxed, like they had every right to be there. That's when I finally shouted, "Hey, what are you doing? This is private property." A few heads turned. Some people paused, but most didn't. Most just kept picking, like I hadn't said anything at all. I walked faster, my heart pounding now, anger rising with every step. I said, "Stop. You can't be here." That's when one woman looked at me, confused, almost annoyed. "What do you mean? This is the free picking event, right?" Free picking? The words didn't make sense. "What are you talking about?" I said. She frowned slightly, like I was the one being difficult. The HOA posted about it. They said this farm is open to the public today. And just like that, everything clicked into place. The noise, the people, the confidence. They weren't sneaking in. They weren't trespassing in their minds. They thought they were invited. And I knew exactly who was behind it. Karen, the HOA president. The one person who had no authority over my land, but always acted like she did. I felt this wave of disbelief wash over me, quickly followed by anger. No, not just anger. Something heavier. Because I knew, in that moment, this wasn't going to be easy to fix. The damage was already happening, and it was spreading with every second. I pulled out my phone immediately, my hands shaking slightly as I opened the community page. And there it was. A post. Bright, cheerful, full of excitement. Local strawberry farm opening to the public this Saturday. Free picking for families. Bring your baskets and enjoy. No mention of permission. No mention of ownership. Just a lie. A simple, casual lie that had turned into a full-scale invasion. I looked back up at my field, and it hit me just how bad this was going to be. Because this wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. This was hundreds of people acting on false information. And they were destroying everything I had worked for. I didn't waste another second. The moment it fully sank in what was happening, something inside me just snapped into action. Not panic. Not confusion anymore. Just urgency. I started moving through the field faster now, my steps heavier, more aggressive, pushing past people, my voice louder than before. Everyone needs to leave. Right now? This is private property. This time, more heads turned. More people paused. A few actually straightened up from where they were picking, strawberries still in their hands, looking at me like they were trying to figure out if I was serious. But the problem wasn't just getting their attention. The problem was, they didn't believe me. I could see it in their faces. Confusion, doubt, even irritation. Like I was interrupting something they had every right to be doing. I kept walking, pointing toward the exit, my voice sharper now. "You can't be here. This isn't open. You need to leave now." A small group nearby stopped completely this time. A man in his 40s looked at me, then at the others around him, and then back at me, and he laughed. Not nervously, not awkwardly, just casually. Nice try, he said. You can't just scare people off after inviting them. That word hit me harder than I expected. Inviting. Like this whole thing was something I had planned. Like I had opened my gates and welcomed them in. My jaw tightened instantly. I didn't invite anyone, I said, sharper than before. This was never open to the public. The man shrugged, like it didn't matter what I said. Well, that's not what we heard. A woman standing next to him nodded immediately. Yeah, the HOA posted about it, she added. They said this was a community event. And there it was again. That same misunderstanding, spreading through every person here like it was fact. And that's when I realized something that made everything worse. These people weren't trying to steal. They weren't sneaking around or acting guilty. They genuinely believed they were allowed to be here. Which meant, in their minds, I was the problem. I was the one causing a scene. I was the one ruining something they thought was perfectly fine. And that made it 10 times harder to control. Because now I wasn't just dealing with trespassers. I was dealing with a crowd that felt justified. I moved deeper into the field, raising my voice again, louder than I'd ever had to before. This is private property. You need to leave immediately. Some people started putting things down. Others hesitated. But not everyone. Not even close. Because while I was trying to stop them, the damage didn't slow down. It kept happening. Right in front of me. I saw a group of kids running straight through one of the rows, laughing, chasing each other like it was a playground. Their shoes crushed plants with every step, leaves snapping under their feet, strawberries getting flattened into the soil. They didn't even notice. Or maybe they didn't care. I turned and saw another man pulling strawberries too early, tossing half of them aside after realizing they weren't ripe. He didn't put them back. He didn't think twice. Just grabbed more. Further down, a woman dropped her basket, completely full, and instead of picking everything up, she just grabbed what she could and walked away, leaving the rest scattered across the ground. Perfect fruit. Ruined. Wasted. It felt unreal. Like I was watching something collapse in slow motion, and no matter how loud I shouted, no matter how fast I moved, I couldn't stop it. All those weeks of work. Every early morning. Every long day in the sun. Every careful decision about timing, watering, protecting the crops. All of it. Being undone in front of my eyes. And there was nothing I could do fast enough to fix it. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking slightly now, not from fear, but from the overwhelming frustration of knowing I was losing control of something I had spent months building. That's when I pulled out my phone. I stared at it for a second. Because I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to escalate things. I didn't want sirens, officers, reports. But I had no choice. I stepped to the side, trying to find a clear signal, and called the police. As I explained what was happening, I could still hear everything around me. Voices, laughter, movement, the sound of plants being stepped on. It didn't stop. Even while I was asking for help. It didn't stop. When I hung up, I went right back into the field. Still shouting. Still trying. Stop picking. Leave the area. This is private property. Some people started leaving now. Slowly. Reluctantly. But others pushed back. A man shook his head and said, "You're overreacting." Another one added, "It's not that serious." And then one guy looked straight at me, holding a handful of strawberries, and said, "It's just strawberries, man. Chill out." For a second, I just stared at him. Because I realized something in that moment. There was no way to explain it. Not here. Not like this. Not to someone who hadn't lived it. Because to him, it was just fruit. Something small. Something replaceable. But to me, it was everything. It was income. It was time. It was months of effort compressed into a single harvest window. It was bills. It was survival. And trying to explain that in the middle of chaos like this was pointless. So I didn't respond. I just kept moving. Kept trying. Kept hoping I could at least slow the damage down. By the time the police finally arrived, it already felt too late. Their cars pulled up near the edge of the property, lights flashing, drawing attention immediately. Officers stepped out quickly, scanning the situation, and I could see the shift happen almost instantly. Authority changed everything. People who had ignored me now started listening. Officers began moving through the field, telling people clearly, firmly, that they needed to leave. That this was private property. That they were not allowed to be there. Confusion spread through the crowd. Some people argued. Some tried to explain themselves. Others looked embarrassed, realizing what had actually happened. But slowly, Very slowly. The crowd began to thin. Groups started walking back toward their cars. Families gathered their things. People who had arrived excited were now leaving quietly, one by one, car by car. The noise that had filled the morning started fading, until eventually, it was gone, completely gone. And what replaced it was silence. Heavy silence. The kind that feels louder than noise. I stood there for a long moment, not moving, just looking out over the field. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like something that had actually just happened. It felt like I had stepped into someone else's mess. But it was mine. All of it. I started walking. Slowly this time. No urgency left. No shouting. Just walking. Through what was left. Crushed plants lined the rows. Leaves torn apart. Stems empty where fruit had been. Strawberries scattered everywhere. Some whole. Some half-eaten. Some completely destroyed. The ground was uneven now. Footprints pressed into the soil from hundreds of people moving through it. I bent down and picked one up. A strawberry. Perfectly ripe. Or at least it had been. Now it was crushed, soft, unusable. I held it for a second, then let it fall from my hand, and kept walking, doing the math in my head, even though I didn't want to, because I already knew. I knew what this harvest was supposed to bring in. I knew what I had planned. I knew what I had counted on. And I knew. It was gone. Not partially. Not something I could recover later. Gone. Completely gone. By the time I sat down later that day and went through the numbers properly, the final figure settled in. $22,000. Lost. In a single morning. I stared at that number for a long time. Not reacting. Not moving. Just letting it sink in. Because the worst part wasn't just the loss. It wasn't just the money. It was how unnecessary it all was. This wasn't weather. This wasn't pests. This wasn't something out of my control. This was avoidable. Completely avoidable. This was one person making a decision about something that wasn't theirs. And now, I was the one left dealing with the consequences. I didn't wait. There wasn't anything left to think about. No second guessing. No cooling down. No, maybe I should handle this later. Because later wouldn't change what had already happened. So I grabbed my keys, got in my truck, and drove straight to the HOA office. The whole drive felt unreal. My hands were tied on the steering wheel, my mind replaying everything over and over again. The crowd, the noise, the damage, the way people looked at me like I was the one in the wrong. And underneath all of that was something heavier. Something that kept repeating in my head. This didn't have to happen. This wasn't an accident. This was a decision. And I knew exactly who made it. I didn't call ahead. I didn't try to set up a meeting. I didn't even think about what I was going to say once I got there. Because honestly, there was nothing to prepare. When I arrived, I parked quickly and walked straight inside. The building was quiet. Too quiet. Like it existed in a completely different world from what had just happened on my farm. Clean floors. Organized desks. Calm atmosphere. It didn't match the chaos I had just left behind. And then I saw her. Karen. Sitting exactly where I expected her to be. Behind her desk, posture straight, everything in place, like it was just another normal day. For a moment, I just stood there, not speaking, not moving, just looking at her, trying to understand something that didn't make sense. How someone could cause that much damage, and still sit there like nothing had happened, like everything was fine. She looked up, noticed me, and gave that same controlled, polite smile. The kind of smile that doesn't change no matter what's happening. "Can I help you?" she asked. Calm, neutral, almost pleasant. I didn't sit down. I didn't return the smile. I didn't even take a breath before speaking. "You told people my farm was open." My voice was steady, not loud, not emotional, just direct. Her expression didn't change much. If anything, she looked unsurprised. "Oh yes," she said casually. "We wanted to create a nice community event." For a second, I didn't respond. Because I was trying to process the way she said it. Like it was something positive. Like it was something she should be proud of. "A community event," I repeated quietly. I took a step closer to her desk. "You had no permission to do that." She tilted her head slightly, like she was considering my words, but not really taking them seriously. "Well," she said, "I assumed." "That's the problem." I cut in immediately. "You assumed." The word hung there between us. Because that's all it was. An assumption. One decision, made without asking, without checking, without thinking about the consequences. And that one decision had destroyed everything. I pulled out my phone and placed it in front of her. "Look at this," I said. I scrolled through the photos, slowly. The field filled with people. The damaged rows. The crushed plants. The empty spaces where fruit should have been. She leaned forward slightly and looked. And for the first time, her smile faded. But not in the way I expected. Not shock. Not guilt. Not regret. Just mild discomfort. Like she was looking at something inconvenient. I didn't think that many people would come, she said. That sentence. Out of everything she could have said, that was the one she chose. Not I'm sorry. Not I didn't realize. Not I'll fix this. Just I didn't think. I stared at her for a moment, letting that sink in, letting it settle. You didn't think? I repeated slowly. She gave a small shrug. It seemed like a harmless idea. Harmless. That word echoed in my head. Harmless. $22,000 gone. Months of work destroyed. An entire harvest wiped out. And to her, it was harmless. That's when something shifted inside me. Not anger. Not frustration. Something clearer. Something colder. Understanding. Because in that moment, I realized something important. She wasn't going to take responsibility. Not here. Not like this. Not because I asked her to. And definitely not because she felt guilty. So I stopped trying to make her understand. Because it wasn't going to happen. I picked up my phone, took one last look at her, and said, I'll be in touch. No yelling. No threats. Just a statement. And then I turned around and walked out. The next few days were different. Quieter. Focused. Because now it wasn't about reacting anymore. It was about proving. I started gathering everything. Every piece of evidence I could. Screenshots of her post. The exact words she used. The way she presented it as fact. Photos of the field before and after. Close-ups of the damage. Wide shots showing the scale of what happened. I reached out to people who had been there. Neighbors. Witnesses. Even a few of the visitors who later realized the truth. Statements. Accounts. Anything that documented what happened. I got a copy of the police report. Every detail mattered. Every piece added weight. Because if she thought this would fade away, if she thought it would be forgotten in a few days, she was wrong. Completely wrong. Once everything was organized, I took the next step. I filed a lawsuit. Not just for the money, but for everything. The negligence. The misrepresentation. The damage caused by a decision that was never hers to make. At first, the HOA pushed back. Of course they did. They called it a misunderstanding. They said it was miscommunication. They tried to make it sound smaller than it was. Like it was just an unfortunate situation. But the problem was, the evidence didn't support that. The post was clear. The damage was visible. And the connection between the two was undeniable. Weeks passed. Back and forth. Emails. Meetings. Discussions. Pressure building slowly over time.